This is probably not number one on our list.
No.
So if he runs out of time for the discussion, this would be more likely something that she'd run out of time for, unless we were really, really clear with her that this is why it needs to be done, and so on. So no, data is less urgent than matters of the economic survival of the basin.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's fair.
But it's still an issue, I suppose, and it is something that matters in the day-to-day. I mean, it's also interesting, I mean, to think about it. So just again, to come back to the technical issue of if once you have submitted the data and you can destroy it in your own archive, but then you don't have access to the data in the newly existing archive, that obviously is an issue that has huge implications, I suppose, also for all the other areas within the organization then, in terms of what they can do if they don't have access to their own data.
It does. I mean, the access. So the access relates to data that hasn't been disclosed yet. So I think if the data would then immediately become public, I think that's all right. It's just if you're drilling a well and you want to share that data with your partners. Yeah. So it's very unlikely at that point the licensee would be destroying the copies of the data themselves. Okay. But at the same time, they then need to make 6 copies of it and post it out to their other licensees or whatever other more digital process they may have now in order to send those copies around. It's just a lot of extra work, whereas previously the system would have happened automatically.
Yeah.
So it's kind of I keep talking of stones and shoes, but there's almost no room for your feet at the moment in terms of what's rattling around in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, this is really helpful to understand this problem or these problems, the stones, a little bit more. I'm just looking at the question that I've written down, but I think we covered all of them really. In terms of the other meetings you were talking about, so with academic users, with the exploration users, and so on, is it possible are there going to be more meetings of that sort, consultations with people, with other users of the NDR that one could sit in, possibly, potentially?
So they are not in my gift. So
right.
If you, so the exploration task force meetings, I just get written reports of. So they are their own community. You could ask David if the OGA would be willing to have you sit in on a meeting of their digital energy platform advisory committee.
Okay,
again, that's those meetings are interesting for their own reasons. There's one of those in mid-December, if that would fit the schedule of the work you're doing.
I've got some flexibility at the moment. What is it called? Digital Energy Platform Advisory Committee.
That's the one. It's brilliant. DPAC. It's a name that nobody likes, but it's what we have at the moment.
Okay, right. And so this is also about obviously the digital platform, but it is an OGA internal. No.
Yes, it's a. I need to leave you in a couple of minutes.
Sorry,
the backstory to this one relates to industry nervousness around what happens if we hand over the data and the keys and all of this stuff to the OGA to form the NDR. So are they going to behave, and how does industry continue to get a say in what happens with what is a 20-plus industry investment in data at the time? But there was very much kind of the previous chief executive of the company I worked for handing over his life work to the government and saying, please look after it. If you wanted some means through which to get insight and some influence as to what happened next. So there was an agreement to establish an NDR advisory committee, which lasted for a couple of years during CDA's delivery of the contract to deliver OGA services, the NDR services to the OGA. But that was transformed late last year, something like that, into a more broader committee, the Digital Energy Platform Advisory Committee, which looks at the NDR as one component of all of the digital services that the OGA offers.
Right.
And in that committee, we and in its NDR-focused one, we still encounter and still struggling with the strength of industry's voice there, because it's again quite challenging to encourage the OGA to take advice,
right,
and to be guided rather than to be simply told what is happening. So it's much more of a committee in which the OGA shares information with us and we get to comment on it.
Right.
Rather than to ask questions and to seek answers. So we continue to try and find ways to push that committee forwards. But again, it would be an interesting one to sit in if David were able to wangle you in there. And that one is attended by a broad range of stakeholders. So there's everyone from Geological Survey through to John Underhill at the Harriet Watson there, and various other academia through to industry, through to licensees, exploration, a good number of OGA folk in there too.
Right.
So it's a much broader church in terms of trying to, it's supposed to advise the OGA on its digital strategy. But arguably at the moment it's mostly just providing commentary on the strategy as set. So it's how do you move that forwards?
Right, interesting. I can always ask, and he can always say
yes.
no.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Yes, that could be fun.
Yeah.
So yes, I've been quite open over the past little while, so I trust you'll be circumspect.
No, I would be. I was going to ask you
where this ends up.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I've obviously been taking notes. At some point, we might want to talk about kind of how I can use those. I mean, obviously, I can. You can either say anonymously or not at all, or which I hope not, of course. But that would be useful to discuss. But I take it you have to leave now, so maybe we should...
I need to go. I need to move on with the afternoon. But yes, I think there's it certainly provide insight and colour in terms of the relationships and the challenges of our evolving positioning with the OGA. So I hope it is interesting from that perspective.
It's very interesting, thank you. And it's just providing such a different perspective on what is going on in that relationship, between industry and regulator, from what one stereotypically might think, where the industry is perhaps much more seen as in power, or especially the oil industry, that is kind of that sense, that public sense one has of the industry. But behind the facade, there's a lot more going on. And then, of course, also these internal to the organizations kind of issues about what role these kinds of issues have. Anyway. More reflections that I can send you on this as well.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much for your time, though, and for being so open. I really, really appreciate that. And I will be in touch, but I will also try and attend. So I've rearranged what I had on the first in the afternoon. So I shall be there at the meeting.
We shall see what happens next. Yeah. This is a soap opera, isn't it? But yes, the next episode of our particular journey. But no, thank you very much. It's good to talk. It certainly helps me in terms of a bit of reflection in terms of why we work the way we do, and where we need to be more conscious in terms of how we approach these things. That's certainly helpful. But thank you. Have a lovely weekend when it comes. And we'll
you too.
Catch up on the 1st, if not before.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.